Hello. I think we're live, but I may not have raided the channel. Quick. I think I messed it up. And I can hear me as well. 1 second. Oh my goodness.
I don't know what's going on.
No, neither do I.
Yes.
Wait. I know what's going on. Oh my God. Okay. I think we might be all right now.
Okay.
No. I can hear myself.
Oh, echo.
Oh my God. I don't even know where chat is. Here we go. Yay, people can see us.
Hi, people.
But you can only hear us once. Okay, so I need to sort my sound out. 1 second.
I'm good.
Oh, I know what it is. I didn't mute where I'm watching chat. I had it playing on the browser. But
it's always something like that.
Yeah, we're all good now. Okay. All right. I've gone very, very red. I forgot to raid and I panicked because I couldn't have sound. So thank you everyone for coming over. Oh my God. Okay. So the pre-show idea was ambitious, Rachel.
I see.
Yeah, I was really nervous about today, and I was so thankful that I had you coming on. So there we go. There's you as a guest, and I probably was just over ambitious trying to do this all in one go. And what I'm going to do is I've got us a bot as well, and I've got some stuff happening.
Okay.
So I've now just put you on chat, introduced you, who you are. I am Tomato Red, as Akshamaji said. I've just butchered your name as well. It's okay. It's okay. So Rachel, whilst I sort out something, do you want to tell us who you are and where do you come from? That was very like 90s UK television with Cilla Black, who probably means nothing to you, but you know, that was a saying, and every time I say that I think of that. So yeah, who the hell are you, Rachel?
Yeah. Who are you intruding on this podcast? Well, I'm just a longtime .NET developer. I talk at conferences, sometimes I blog, I do advocacy for JetBrains. So I've been around .NET for a while, and I do these things, and that's that.
Yeah, but you're pretty you're pretty more than that, I think. You're my friend for once.
There's also that.
Yes. And you know, I think you have done so much over the years and worked in so many different aspects of everything. I mean, because you've worked for Microsoft twice, haven't you?
Yeah, once wasn't enough. I am a glutton, and I went right back for more.
And did you go back to the same team? I'm just trying to figure something out here. Or did you go different places?
No, by the time I came back, that old team had been changed over into, like, the role turned into a whole new role. And those people had moved on into either that new role or a different role. So
okay.
There's no team at that point. It's a couple of years later, so things change, as you might expect.
Yeah. And so when did you join JetBrains? It's been quite a while now, hasn't it?
Yeah, I've been there about 3 years now. So.
Gosh.
Good time.
Yay. So what I'm going to do is try and calm my very beetroot face down now. Right, I'm going to get rid of our names for a little bit so they're not in front of us.
But it blends in more with that.
With my purple
blouse.
Bits.
It kind of does.
I'm color coordinating with this. At least I'm not quite this color, let's face it. So let's have a look who we have in chat. We've got, okay, right, we've got, I haven't messed up. I nearly messed up. I nearly forgot to press stream on this channel, which would have been a big mess up. We've got Tasha. Tasha, everybody, is my amazing, awesome, wonderful boss. She's in the chat, so you can say hello to Tasha. And we got Cora, my awesome teammate. Looks good, sounds good. Phew. We did manage to bring some people over from the other channel, even though I completely forgot to raid. So that plan backfired, but that's fine. We've got people here, so that's good. Who else have we got in here? So I'm going to see. I've brought in another tool that I have to remember how to use, which is going to help you see chat as well, Rachel. So let me see if this is going to work. I'm not convinced. Shall we test it? Yay! Okay, so Ox says you're Jennifer Aniston from Friends. Rachel, that's it. There you go.
Okay. Sure.
So that's that. So we have got our questions coming in. Good. So I'm going to get chat to ask you some questions, but really we're just going to have one of our long-winded conversations because we're very good at that.
Yes, they are.
I have warned everybody about that you and I just like. So what I haven't told you though, Rachel, is I'm no longer going to Oslo next week.
Did they cancel?
No, but I was a bit nervous about the COVID sort of precautions that they had there, and which was hand gel and no hugs. So I was a bit like,
okay.
I'd rather there was like temperature checks, although I wouldn't want them to temperature check me now. They'd be like, whoa, back away, call the hazmat unit. So I'm not going there. So it's a good job that you planned not to go there to hang out with me, because I wouldn't have been there. Are you going to go to, was it Update Conf you were looking at going to?
Well, yeah, see, I was going to like either join friends there or somewhere, and like, no. That actually happened last week, and we just, I don't even know that was COVID so much as it was just the side effects of COVID, where you're just like, fuck everything. So it's kind of like that.
I think there's a lot of that. I think a lot of us are suffering from that. Oh, hello, Eagle. Eagle Hansen's in the chat. Hello. Nice Definitely to see.
More than normal. Fuck everything.
I find that there's just moments where I just think I can't be asked. I get that. I'm normally like a really proactive person. I'm not much of a procrastinator, but I found myself over the past 2 years going, oh.
Yeah.
It's really hard, I think, to keep motivated when you're basically in a bubble.
Yeah, you're trapped in your place.
Yeah. And that's it. And people are probably wondering where you're based, Rachel, because you sound American, but you're not, are you? Yeah, I mean, you are American, but you're not in America. So.
Right. I'm in Berlin.
In
Deutschland.
Berlin. So, I've been meaning to ask you, can you actually speak German?
Ein bisschen.
Is that a little? I was learning German before COVID. And then after that, I was like, well, that right. Whole effort thing came on.
Yeah, a lot of efforts just kind of took a nosedive with COVID.
Yeah. Eagle, you're saying that our audio is a bit ahead of the video. I don't know how to fix that. I think that's kind of an OBS streamy thing.
A streamy thing.
Yeah. So it's difficult.
So just talk really slow.
I think you'd have to be a ventriloquist to yourself. And then we might manage. So I do have some questions for you, Rachel, because this I have an ulterior motive about this, which I might tell you about. You knew it, didn't you? I want to know if did you back in the day do classic ASP?
I did indeed, and way too much of it.
And for those viewers in there who are, shall we say, a lot younger, and maybe born in the 90s and didn't come to coding till after Classic went. What is Classic? Do you want to explain it?
Good times.
Yeah.
Actually, in a way, sometimes I miss it, but not the calm nonsense behind it.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that last week. Is it Com Plus?
Com Plus and Microsoft Transactions Server. I remember that thing. So I actually had software running on that stuff. But if you had it running well, you had it running well. But if there was a problem, boy, there was a problem. It's really hard to troubleshoot because A, the tools were not what they are now, and B, debugging required you to open up the registry, which I don't think I've had to do maybe once in the last decade and a half, so stuff like that. But Classic ASP was it was the first in the Microsoft stack to do server-side rendering.
Right.
Back then there was also PHP, Perl, some other things that did mostly server-side, and you could render out some stuff. But that's mostly what it was server-side rendering. Not conceptually terribly different than server-side rendering now, but we did not have all these JavaScript frameworks. We didn't have things like Blazor where you could just download .NET to the browser. This was even a little bit before the plugin models and Silverlight. So you were simply rendering everything and sending it down and writing maybe a little bit of JavaScript on the front end. So you didn't have these, have like the really heavy websites, Facebook, like very interactive. There was not a whole lot of that, and especially not in the business world, but maybe in some games and stuff like that. But it was, technology just wasn't what it is,
Yeah.
So
it was very, even just in the years I've been doing web, it's changed tremendously. I've just seen Napalm says, "Com is the devil."
Satan itself.
And we've been, and Classic ASP or bad PHP. I have heard that PHP is quite similar to Classic.
Yeah. How's this one? For a while, I actually did Cold Fusion, which web form developers were like, hey, where did they get this from? Probably over there, right? Also, Ruby came around the beginnings of .NET-ish, maybe a little before.
Oh, really? I didn't know it had been around that long.
Actually, Ruby itself might have been around much longer, but Rails for web development, I think, came along. I could be wrong on that one. I forget sometimes, but I kind of remember this big wave of people going like, Ruby and Rails. You have this Rails framework and stuff.
Yeah. I read somewhere recently, I think someone was talking about Ruby, and they said that Rails, although is obviously the really popular bit about Ruby now, that it is like kind of almost an anti-pattern to the way that Ruby was designed. I have no idea about it, but it's weird how these things come through.
Yeah, never really worked in Ruby to be able to say something like that, but hey, Ruby people out there might know.
Yeah, and I've just seen we've been giving poor old Steve Collins flashbacks to working with VB.com components. So sorry about that.
It could get worse if you did that stuff. Then you were likely stuck doing some Office apps with VBA, right, and moving those Access databases to SQL and stuff like that. I actually did a good amount of consulting at premium rates, like getting people's Access databases that were busting at the seams up into SQL, because they started out as this little app for like 3 people, and then pretty soon 50, 75 people are using this app, right, because somebody had something useful in their company and they just kind of wiggled into it in an Access database, and then they're like, oh crap, what do we do about this now? How about those IT people? They come running over. You're a programmer. Take a look at
Fix it.
Yeah. So most of it was independent consulting, a little bit at little stints at companies and stuff. But yeah, good money to be had there. Well, I don't know about now, but there was at one time money to be had with that.
Well, it's amazing where I am, which is only about 60 miles north of London. Even when I last worked locally, which was like 2017, there was still a lot of jobs advertising that they wanted classic. I never touched it.
Okay.
They were also web forms. There was so much maintaining of old web forms. There still is a lot of old web forms.
Yeah.
I've never touched either of those. I came straight into MVC 4.2 or something like that.
Okay. You missed a good one with web form.
I've looked at web forms. I've seen like the view state thing at the bottom, like that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it manages it all.
That was a thing that was a good idea at the time, and it quickly, it was this cute little tiny reptile you brought home, and a year later it is a 18-foot alligator, and it is coming at your ass really fast.
Oh my god.
That is web forms. And so that's what happened. Like, people, it was to make a drag and drop environment somewhat palatable. Yeah. And this actually helped bring like masses of developers into ASP.NET, right?
Yeah, which is from WinForms.
A huge platform. Right.
Yeah.
And so web development and doing that. And then you could drag and drop. But in order to be able to allow this paradigm in which you can do everything on the server, render it down to the client, and then not have to deal with JavaScript, they did it for you, which meant you had to send a whole bunch of data down with each response, which would be the view state, which ended up being gigantic and not this small little thing that, it should have been, right? But yeah, so.
This is it. And this one, Silicon Orchid, saying those companies that were advertising locally were saying that they're embracing cutting edge software whilst and investing in their staff while still maintaining web forms and classic ASP.
So they had other cutting edge stuff with the classic. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, maybe they were using CSS and maybe some JavaScript and jQuery, maybe stuff like that.
Calling that cutting edge. I lived in Pennsylvania. That's where I was born and raised. And, it's only a couple hours away from New York City, but it's a very big difference in that it's kind of rural up in the northeast quadrant of that state. And there's not a whole lot of tech. And the little county I was in would get so excited about any company that said they were bringing technology in. And I remember somewhere around hearing people asking me about the jobs with stuff that was coming in, which would have been this company that came in like 2012, maybe. I think this was like the first time I was at Microsoft, and people were like, oh, so this place is coming in, and would you go work there? The cutting edge. And then I look at this place, and it's a mainframe. I'm like, not cutting edge, but the politicians certainly bought it, right? Because I guess to them, how the hell would they know? They're politicians, right? They're not tech people. A big ass computer filling a whole room is probably like just astounding to them, because they don't know that that's how it used to be, and now it's really the small ones that are impressive. It's not the big ones anymore.
The smaller and smaller they get,
unless you go to a data center, but that's right. It's not a mainframe.
No, well, that's a lot of computers then, isn't
it? A lot
and computers within computers when we start going into all the virtual machines and stuff like that.
Yeah, so stuff like that. So they brought in, what they thought was super high-tech COBOL jobs and knock yourselves out.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to manage this bloody chat thing that keeps popping up just below your chin underneath the crane. So we've got Ravi387 saying, I'm a big fan of you. I assume you, not me, following you on Tumblr for 5 years. Are you on Tumblr, Rachel? No, I'm wondering. Yes, I don't know. So Silicon Orchid has shared a recent job description. Classic ASP developer here. Two enterprise products dealing with millions of data subjects in large organizations. They are now looking for a classic ASP developer to join their team working on classic ASP 50% of the time. That's a recent job description. And it is worrying that sort of is still around. But I know, speaking to customers, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
But it does make maintenance a lot harder. Now, I told you there was an ulterior motive, didn't I?
Uh-oh. Yes.
Now, Silicon Orchid, who you know is a troublemaker, generally, has set me a challenge to do a stream. Oh, he's just said that in that job description. I didn't get down to it. It said passionate about making clean and maintainable code whilst working 50% of the time on classic ASP. So that's kind of worrying.
Wait, somebody's actually passionate about making clean and maintainable classic ASP code today? Okay.
Supposedly.
I mean, how much money are they offering? I mean, you can be passionate for a certain amount of cash. Like, as a rule, people tend to, go with incentives.
I don't know. It says the company has recently seen massive investment, which has allowed them to put themselves in a growth period, expanding rapidly and investing heavily in the IT team. They work out of some really nice offices based on a campus that includes a gym, restaurant, parking, and more.
Yeah, during COVID?
Yeah, that's, really inspiring. I think they try and sell you on, oh, we have a gym, or we give you lunches, so you never need to leave the office.
Yeah.
So that's worrying. So I was telling you about my ulterior motive, wasn't I? So,
okay.
So Silicon Orchid, who is a troublemaker, has challenged me to build a classic ASP site on stream. And I have roped in poor Alyssa from the Code It Live channel to do it with me. So we're both completely clueless. Alyssa's new to .NET. I mean, not that classic is .NET, but, just to learn the history.
This would be in VB also.
Yes.
I mean, it's not... all right, now let me back up the cart here. All right. So for a minute there, I lapsed into VB.NET, and I was going to say it's basically just compiles down to the same stuff. That's web forms and later. That's not classic ASP. That is just like older VB before .NET, which is syntactically not hard.
No.
It is more Englishy. It is. I mean, the point of basic, like back when it was actually basic, and I mean, it kind of carries forward to today with beginners all-purpose symbolic instruction code. So it's syntactically should not be terribly difficult. Of course, it is. I think the hardest part might actually be trying to set up your environment to get a nice environment to have that, because I don't think you could run it now without IIS, unless, I mean, somebody may have open sourced something by now. It's been a long time since I've touched that stuff.
Well, so in his challenge, he has been fair. He's written it out like a Top Gear challenge, the Grand Tour as they are now. And they get given a challenge by the producers to do stuff in lots of different cards. He's done it like that. He's really gone all in for this. And he's actually built it locally. He's tested it all so that if I get stuck, and Alyssa and I get stuck, but I thought I might like someone to come in on stream and scream at us, which I'm thinking maybe you. And maybe you come in and do stuff. Oh, Napalm's saying that someone did something insane about Dockerizing a classic. Is that right? Wow.
Why not? Right? That actually would make a great case for that, I think. You get that environment set up, and then you don't have to deal with it outside of a container.
Well, we actually at VMware do put Classic onto VMs. I'm pretty sure that we containerize it as well. So I'm not surprised. I don't know if we just run it on VMs or if we containerize it itself. I need to find that out. But we have a lot of customers who still have Classic, and there's no need for them to upgrade it because they just need it to do it. They're not adding any features to it. They're just doing the odd bug fix. and then still it goes. But yeah, seems to be a lot of horror stories coming through in the chat. We've dredged up a lot of bad memories. Bad memories for people. So I feel quite like I've missed out on a whole bit of culture because I just came straight in with good old MVC, and maybe that's why I'm really stuck with MVC. That, you know, I love it. I do it. It's my go-to project. I know Napalm says it's his go-to project as well. And just looking at it here, we've brought up not bad memories, scars. They're scarred. People in chat are scarred. So, you know, this is a sore topic we have here.
Right.
So apparently I should mention that the challenge document, does have a big red line that I've been really good and not read below, and that's the how to get it, how to do stuff if I get stuck. So he has been quite good at being all inclusive there.
So what is the criteria? Do you get to use, say, Visual Øredev, which was the IDE at the time, and it sucked, or Notepad, which was better?
He hasn't said. So who was he speaking about into dev with? Oh, it was Jeff Fritz. We were chatting to him about into dev, and he was saying it, and it was like, oh.
Just think, this is what Visual Studio became at some point. It was called
He showed me some screenshots of it. Actually, Silicon Orchid did a whole slide deck of the history of .NET. Maybe I should bring that up. I'm sure he shared that with me. I have to go and find it. Maybe I can share it with you. Can we not do classic ASP on Rider, Rachel?
I don't think so. I mean, so it is the old VB script parser from any and all browsers that have a script parser. So in that respect, you might. I mean, let me check and see if there's like a VB script extension or something. I don't think so, though, only because Rider came out in 2016. It came out targeting .NET to start. And technically, ASP Classic isn't .NET.
No,
So,
this is it.
Unless somebody wrote something. I don't think we did, though. I'd have to go look. But for the HTML, actually, you can do all of it in WebStorm, which basically Rider has WebStorm in it, but you don't need half of Rider for JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, right? You can just use WebStorm. You could still write the VB script since it is not compiled, right? It's just script, and you just run it, and it's just parsed. Right? So you could essentially then use WebStorm. You could use Rider if you just happen to like that better. It still works with HTML and CSS and all that stuff. So you can do that. You just might not get IntelliSense for the old VB script. But then if you use Øredev, there's not enough. There was maybe like 6 tags that actually had IntelliSense or any kind of like little pop-up helps. And Øredev was kind of like Notepad with a couple of toolbar buttons and whatnot. It was not so great for actual helping of the code, like the actual editing itself. It was mostly everything around the editor, not so much the editor itself. So.
Well, I have got the slides up so we can see if he's got into dev in there. I have seen there is a plugin for Classic on VS Code, so we could do it on there. Silicon Orchid is saying that we're live on the Layla Codes It channel. Yeah, that's because we're hosting on that channel, so it's fine. And then shall I show you this page? Let me come over here. Have I got it? Yes. Oh, come on. No, that's not working. It's not plumbed in. I tell you, this whole thing was a bit of a disaster. Here we go. So we went to a whole history lesson And Silicon Orchid is saying the most important tag was the marquee tag here.
Yeah,
And let me just see, what was this? Okay, there is a ASP classic support and extension VS Code. There you go. That's, if I bring that up here, there we go. You see, classic ASP support. So we can develop it on there. So I guess we went right back to Windows 95 and WinNT4. I think that's quite familiar though. And then
yeah, that's
is this bringing back memories for you as well, Rachel?
it does. It does.
So I think what I'm looking at here, this one over here is access. So you can see that's the data. I can never remember the name of those. Visual SQL Studio, SQL Server Studio Manager Studio. That tool, that one. They did away with this diagram tool, which I actually really liked. So, and then, is this into dev?
So no, that's actual just Visual Basic. So classic ASP, you would actually be writing VB script, which was kind of like VB, but not compiled, right? Similar in syntax and whatnot, but yeah, this would be just actual VB straight up WinForms. You can also make DLLs, COM DLLs, MTS DLLs in there, and ActiveX controls and stuff like that. Oh my God, ActiveX controls. I remember when ActiveX was like such a cool technology.
And what was it? I don't know anything about it. You see, I'm so like noob on all of this.
Here's what you would do with, say, an architecture of classic ASP and an enterprise system. You might have that first, like a web page, like a request comes into a web page. Then the web page, boy, I had like hundreds of diagrams over the years of this, and because I haven't used this so long, I doubt I have any on this computer even. But that classic little diagram where you see, the computer over the internet calls the server, right? And it generates a page, but that page might need to hit a database and get data from a database. And in order to do that, the page can't just directly go like, hey, database, what do you want? The page, if you want to break it up into like an architecture, layered architecture, you would have a layer of business logic DLLs, right? So I would go into VB and I would make class libraries and I would just throw all the business logic in there. Now there's two ways to get DLLs to work in a Windows system, and one is to just throw it on the system and run rake server 32, everybody's favorite utility. And it would go and register that, and then you get your own special GUID. It's so cool, and it's just yours, and you're special. And then it's in there on that system, and then when you like make a new instance of something in VB, it should be able to connect to that. And if you go MTS, it's the same thing, but MTS was a little piece of software that ran kind of as like a middleware product, right? So that the web page could then talk to those components in MTS, which would talk to the database. So you could do that as well. So depending on what your architecture was. But the thing is, you had to have like MTS set up and everything else. And then it turned into COM+. They called it COM+ later. So, but basically the same kind of thing. So you would have that application layer of the web server IIS that would render the stuff, but the COM+ layer that did the business logic, and then your database. Classic N tier, or 3 tiers.
Yeah. And Silicon Orchid is saying registering DLLs and remembering to have to do it on the different servers as well.
Oh yeah, if you forgot one, you get all these freak ass errors and stuff. It was real fun. Yeah.
So do you think it was a much harder, I guess in some ways it was easier to develop web applications then, but do you think it was also harder because you just didn't have the tooling and you had to have all these interconnecting blocks?
I think it was easier, but often you ended up just fighting more with stuff because of not having the tools. But if we had tools, it would definitely be way easier, I think, for most things.
Yeah.
Only because if you just actually were to pick apart one of those apps, it is far less complex than some of the stuff you see now. So, because now you might actually have a JavaScript front end, which in and of itself has a great deal of complexity.
Yeah.
You need like 37 gigs of node packages for a JavaScript app. What the hell? Right?
I tell you, I've recently, I did something a few months ago, and I put gulp on a web application, okay? And I had Node Package Manager, and I'd forgotten the pain of using all these Node packages. And then with half a gajillion of them downloaded, I was like, what have I done?
What have I done?
What have I done? And I just remember half of my web development life was spent trying to fix mismatched versions, missing packages, breaks and security issues. I don't know, half the time was spent in package.json and then trying to get the package lock.json to do what I wanted it to do. And it was just really frustrating. I just...
We didn't have that problem because there wasn't any package managers for .NET yet. Get off my lawn.
Just go for it. And I see nobody ever forgot to close database connections on live systems. Gradual memory leaks weren't a thing, honest. This is sounding really frightening.
Yes, like everybody would have this problem, right? Somebody would forget to close the database connections, and then at some point you would actually have to go in there as SA, right? Your system admin on SQL, and just like cut them all off before into MTS and close down the components. And sometimes, like, whoops, that one wasn't supposed to go. They were working on that. Whoops. Like shit like that would happen. It was just Wild West out there. Yeah.
So this is it. I think I come in now, and it's changed so much in, when did I start properly developing? About 2013. I started working, dabbling with sort of .NET. And I think in that time, it's already changed so much. The way, and it keeps changing. I think it's almost changing too much. I can't keep up. Now with the annual cadence, it's good in many ways because we're getting lots of new features. But it does seem to take so much more effort to stay up to date, I find.
Yeah.
And I've only just got some of the .NET 5 things through my head, and now I'm like, oh, well, half of those are gone now, Layla, and now we're doing it on .NET 6, and that's changed, and this has changed, and I'm like, I can't keep up. I don't know how JavaScript developers do it.
So I recall Microsoft several times had taken some polls, particularly with ASP insiders and some of the MVPs, and they said, what do you prefer? Now, this was going back a while, maybe back to earlier .NET, but I think this kind of set some of a tone. Overwhelmingly, people said, oh, we want the stuff to come out, just bring it out as fast as possible. And I'm like, no, right? And then, so I think this was a thing where it sounds awesome for stuff to be coming out all the time because, like you said, you get new features and there's toys, and it's like Christmas year freaking around, right? But then, it actually, if your job is keeping up with it, then you have a lot of work to do, and you don't ever get a break. If you're a regular old developer in XYZ Corporation, you're just waiting. If they have a feature you need, then you're upgrading for that. Right? Your team's upgrading for that. If not, then why? Right? Because you don't want to break shit that is not broken, right? That sort of thing. So you have that as a kind of an issue.
Well, I just remember I wanted to upgrade to Visual Studio 2017 from 2013. And even just that, when I worked for an enterprise, was like, no, you can't do that. It might break stuff. And it just felt, I don't think a lot of developers feel the need to keep on the edge. I don't know if that's because we're advocates and we feel that we have to stay up.
I think this is more the advocates, MVP, conference speaking types, people like us. There's what I call the curse of knowledge. Like, we're out there getting it, like, as it comes out. We're like, have our mouths right up on that fire hose. It's right in our face, right? And your average developer is not doing that. For the most part, they're going in 9 to 5, and this is not something they have to deal with, so they don't it's not a care for them, right? And why would it be? That's not a job mandate for them. But they do have job mandates, and that's to keep their systems running. So that's what they're looking for and waiting for. Sometimes you get some people in roles that get to explore or do little like
spikes.
Like little spikes or proof of concepts and stuff like that, and pilots. So you do get to do that sometimes, which is really cool. But it's not all the time that everybody gets to do that in the corporate. So I think it's us, like, just knowing this stuff ahead of time. Every time I go out doing consultant type work, this is what I see. People are always far behind everything that all my friends present at conferences and are blogging about or talking about and releasing from the mothership and stuff like that. So, yeah. As a matter of fact, I saw, oh my gosh, you might have seen it. There's this thread going around and somebody said, oh gosh, what did people do before Git? And then I just looked at this and thought, I can't wait to see what all the old people are going to say, right? And I'm like, because I know what I would say. And, you know, a lot of my friends are my age, right? So I click on that and I'm like, oh, this is great popcorn here. So, and a couple actually went back as far as Dave says, mentioning source code control for COBOL and stuff. Popple or whatever, I forget what it was. There was one that was called that.
I used SVN.
SVN was popular. Source Safe was also well popular. There's a Microsoft one. It was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I've worked with both of those. I think only very short stint with Source Safe. I did a lot with SVN. I don't know what it was. I found SVN really difficult because I did Git first, and then I went to work at a job where they used SVN, and I was like,
oh, it's like you're going backwards.
Oh, it was horrendous. I didn't know what to do.
The models are a little different.
Yeah. And it's, but I do think that, what have you thrown around now? What are you doing?
I dropped my phone. I was like just sitting here poking at it and it just flew off the desk. Oh well.
Well, hopefully it's not smashed into pieces. Yeah.
It's not.
Or did you do that on purpose so you could get the latest and greatest?
No, it's a new phone. So.
So just having a look in chat. So Steve Talks Code is saying the horrors of RDO, DAO, then ADO.
Yeah. Dude, data sets.
Yeah.
The data access objects, and then you had to hook up the ODBC drivers. And all that
God,
stuff.
I forgot about some of that stuff. I had to do that very early on. I did ADO at somewhere. I did have to work with ODBC or whatever they are. I had to do stuff that I'd even forgotten that at one of the jobs I had to do. We looked at that. And this is like in the last 10 years as well. But, you know, why... I think...
Honestly, I liked ADO.net.
That's what I used, ADO.net.
Just getting a nice rectangle of data, spit into it, and off you go. Sometimes is easier.
And I think that's when I first tried Dapper. The first Dapper. The Dapper with 2 P's and an E. Because, you know, developers are really bad at naming things. So now we've got Dapper with no P and no E. But I used Dapper the first time round with ADO.net, which sort of stopped me, like, just from doing SQL injection type stuff. Which I guess that was kind of a thing back then, because we didn't really have any of the safeguards that we do now. None of the sort of modeling and the sort of passing from model to model all the way back and all these layers. It was sort of like dumping stuff directly in, wasn't it? So
basically,
But
so along the lines of that tweet, so of course you had people like, I use this and that, but there was a significant number of people. The other thing I was looking for was people who don't use source code control and find very creative ways to get around it.
All right, what were they?
A lot of people do the copy to a file share, overwrite the last person, and do a change log in Word. Right? That's a very common thing to do.
Yeah.
They zip it up, do that. Then you have people that they make their own kind of little scripts for source code control that does stuff like this. And there's tons of things that people do like this. Through my years consulting, I've seen people do things, even especially with Visual Source Safe, which was one of the things that came up. This used to have this mode. It was much different than Git. You didn't just have people just pull stuff and then you have this local copy not related to that data until you push.
It locked it, didn't it?
It would lock it.
Yeah.
Now there were ways to unlock it or force it or whatever if you were an admin, or enable multiple people to work on it at the same time, but by default it was one at a time. And I had this one client and they were like, look, we have this problem. We keep losing data. If somebody quits, we lose all their data. If something bad happens, we lose all the data. And can you look at this? Can you help us with source code control? And it was VSS. And this was like a major electronics company, by the way. So everybody here probably has electronics by these people.
Yeah.
And so I go and I'm going, okay, so what are you doing? And they have this project, the whole team. And everybody, instead of getting a feature or an area to work on or something, an aspect of the program, they all got a file. Oh, okay, I've seen weird shit. They get a file. Why? Because everybody would check out their one file and work on that file. And if the project was 2 months, they worked on that file for 2 months, kept it checked out for 2 months, and then checked it in at the end of 2 months. And I'm like, but you're literally not actually using the source code control. Oh, but we are. We have it installed. We check it out, and then we check it in at the end. All right. I mean, I guess in the very most technical sense, you are, but you're not at the same time. I'm like, okay, let's try this a different way. How about we check in early, check in often, and we print out this little banner and have everybody look at it on the wall. And every day we're going to check in early and check in often. And they're like, but then someone else can check out the file. What? Yes. And they were like, but you're going to let somebody check out the file. Somebody else. Maybe. What if it wasn't that person's file? I'm like, well, then they work on it. What the fuck? Like, seriously, what the fuck? Then they work on it. And they're like, but then that original person, it's their file and they can't work on it.
But it's such a weird mentality, isn't it? And it's getting past it.
I'm like, okay, look, here's what we need. We need to create a workflow here.
Yes. Yeah, I am.
But I helped them. I created this whole workflow. I'm like, here's what you do. Look, first off, you actually need a little therapy in which you're so attached to everybody gets a file. It's my file, and I will not give it up until you pry it from my cold, dead hands, right? And, no, let other people work on it. You know what? Worst happens. Somebody has it checked out. You can't check out your file. And then tomorrow, you go over there and kick them in the ass and take your file back.
Yeah, or just say, oh, sorry, I was working on that. Can you check it back in?
You could just bounce other people out, and that'll teach their ass, right? That'll teach them.
Oh, could you? You could do that.
You could, if you had admin rights.
Yeah.
But, nonetheless, I'm like, if you wanted to be a dick also. But, got to do what you got to do.
Well, I think...
But... Yeah, it took them a while, and it took them a couple attempts. They still kept reverting back to this terribly, this anti-pattern workflow. I'm like, this is counterproductive, and this is why you're losing data.
Yeah.
And watch, if I as I'm working on this other project alongside, I will just check stuff in and out, and I'm going to show you how it works, right? And then also go around and talk to everybody about doing this on the team every day. They were very nervous about it. And I'm like, it's funny that you're nervous about doing the thing that will protect your code more and keep, you can roll it back. If somebody leaves, at most, you're not going to lose much, right? And you're not going to lose 2 months of work, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't, and you see stuff like that. And as a consultant, there's a lot of money to be made in helping people work through these kind of problems, fixing up their code or their environments. So.
I think it's the the habit and the routine that's the hardest to break.
Yep. They were worse than smokers trying to get them off of cigarettes. It was a terrible habit.
Yeah, I've seen similar, just with Bitbucket. They called it Shitbucket, and we had like CI/CD set up from this, but no, the lead developer, I'd say, okay, so my change is ready. I've put it up onto main. It was all reviewed. It's on the main branch. And he's like, oh, sorry, could you just give me a file structure exactly matching where the code is? I was like, okay. And he says, just zip it up and send it over to me, and then I'll show you how we do it. Like he was going to impart some wondrous knowledge on me. I was like,
they say something like that, I'm like, oh no.
So here I am, like I've got two files, file explorers side by side. I'm like, okay, so this goes into content, into XY, or into views, or I was doing MVC, so it was some view I was working on or something, or a controller. So I got all the structure down, zipped it up with my one file or my 3 files in this structure, zipped it up, and he's like, Layla, come around. I was like, okay. So I go, and he's like, this is the server here, Layla. I was like, yeah. And then he's like, he unzipped my thing and he just dragged it over onto the server to overwrite the thing. And I was like, oh,
just right onto production.
Just right onto production. We did have we had UAT as well. And I'm like, dude, but how do you know what build we're on? He's like, oh, well, if you've put that on main, it's it's going to be the same, isn't it? I said, but this isn't on UAT. He's like, oh yeah, maybe I should have dragged it onto UAT first. And I was like, user acceptance testing, folks, if you don't know what that is, like a testing step in your nice CI/CD pipeline. And I was like, oh, I only lasted that job 4 months. Because they said Layla teaches Git then. Okay, I was a fairly new developer at this thing. And then I was like, okay, so this is how Git works. This is how you check out a branch. And they're like, because everyone was just working on main and just committing up to main. And no one knew how to do branches or any of that. So I taught them that. I made like little document books that everyone could have on their desk. So they didn't have to go and look at anything. They could just look through this. And they were just like, yeah, Git is shit. I was like,
yeah,
okay, I can't beat this, so I'm just going to leave. So
yeah, once people get into a certain workflow, even if it is like an anti-pattern, it's really hard for some people to break it.
Yeah. And
even when you have like most of a team who's like, we realize this is not the best workflow, and we realize that there is this one over here. If you don't unanimously get every single person on the team on board with this, that one person is going to be like the kink in the gears, and they're just going to like do stuff like that. Like, you have this process, everyone else uses it, but this one person kind of goes around and just dumps stuff on the server. Yeah, that's kind of annoying.
And this is it. They're always bypassing it, aren't they?
Don't be that person.
Code with Sean says, but this is why we. Oh, sorry, Rachel.
Hate us.
Yes, this is it, and they don't like us, and they're like, oh, we've broken that trust with all the people that handle the servers and all of that, and they're like, yeah, those pesky developers, they don't get any access control, no control, And I just see Code with Sean is saying, but this is how we've always done it. That comes up.
Yep.
That's it. That's what comes up all along.
Yep.
I've been neglecting chat a little bit. Steve Talks Code says, this is where we should have a quick plug for Team City. I did.
That's ours.
Yeah, exactly.
We have CI/CD if they had just used Team City.
I think that wasn't the company that used Octopus Deploy. That was someone else. They had that. But I do think they had some kind of CI/CD in place. They just dragged it onto the server and bypassed it. A question from Silicon Orchid. Do we think that companies like Microsoft expect enterprises with potentially huge and entrenched systems to keep updating their code bases? I mean, those decision makers that pay the bills, not developers wanting to use the new shiny. So that goes back to where we were saying all the new bleeding edge and how much it updates a lot. I'm guessing they don't care.
Yeah. I mean, it's the company as a whole does not have like a mission statement on that per se, but their job is to sell software. So they would hope as an organization that people would update as much as possible and keep up to date as much as possible, of course. But I think most of them should know that not everyone does. I think, though, like with us and with MVPs, a lot of folks, especially the ones that are public facing, tend to forget, right? Because we're so used to working in this, bleeding edge environment that we forget that other people don't. And we forget what it's like when you're stuck a little bit behind and you really wanted that little shiny thing and everybody else gets it and you're the only kid that didn't get it.
Yeah. It sucks. I've got something to show you now as well. Does this bring back memories as well?
Am I going to be traumatized? Probably.
Oh, I just realized you can't see the screen. 1 second, because I stole it. There you go. That's it.
This looks like the old web forms designer.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm old enough. I have to do the old people glasses thing. Actually, see it on one screen.
I'll send you out a walking stick, Rachel. Because I have my monitors. I've got my back monitors so far away that sometimes I'm like, can I see that over there? That's why you couldn't see that screen, because I brought it to the monitor that's in front of me because it was too far away, and I was like that. So what else have we got? So what was that? That was ASP.
Oh, yeah. Oh. ASP. That's ASP Web Forms.
Hang on. Wait, go back. So that's .NET 1. That's Visual Basic.NET. That's, there we go. And then we've got Mono, Unity. This was a history lesson that Silicon Orchid gave Alyssa and I on her channel. So we went through them all. Poor old Silverlight. And then all the way through. So, he really went through all of that. So I think it was interesting to learn the history of it. And this is where this challenge for me doing a classic ASP thing came from. So Code with Sean is saying every company has their faults, either with development, CI/CD. Let me get that up on the screen. The real tragedy is when they refuse to address it and get better. Yes, I think that's
for sure.
That's
it. Yeah, spot on there.
And Wiggity Whitney on my team. Say hello to Whitney, everybody. She says +1 to that. So just a quick plug. Whitney and I are going to be doing a stream. I think it's the 15th and 16th of December. We're going to do Kelsey Hightower's Kubernetes the hard way, which is going to be
the hard way.
The hard way. I'm kind of really terrified, but I think we'll manage it. Whitney's awesome, so I think
seems appropriate for 2021. Just saying,
doesn't it? So I'm a little bit nervous about that, to be honest. But I've got all these things that I'm going to be playing around with. So your knowledge on Classic may be invaluable to Alyssa and I.
It's been so long ago.
I know, but apparently when I started talking to Jeff Fritz and Silicon Orchid about it, they were both like, oh yeah, that's really familiar. Oh, it's all coming back to me. Oh, this is, and it was almost like fondness that came to them.
There is, I wrote some like really awesome classic ASP apps. I remember actually right before that, I was doing a lot of VB5 and Windows internals and programming that. And so the web, on Microsoft stack was not really a big thing. But then Classic ASP came, and at first I was a little who moved my cheese about it, right?
Who moved my
And
cheese?
and then yes, my cheese, they moved it. And then I was like, oh, because I didn't want to do web development, I just wanted to do Windows development because that's what the apps were. And I also did other stuff like Clipper and DBase.
I don't know what those are.
These are like super old databases with a UI, stuff like that, Delphi, those kind of things.
Yeah, I know Delphi because the last web developer job I did before I went into advocacy, so this was late 2017, early 2018, they had Delphi developers there.
Yeah.
And they were paid a fortune.
Yeah.
That's
the thing, like, it's all about what period of time something is, right? The bleeding edge gets you a lot of money and a little bit of a tail. And then there's this bulk of, like, the lifetime of a product where you just get an average salary for that product. Yeah. And then a bunch of the people get older or die, and then the prices go pew again.
Older and die.
Sudden, right? Did I say that one out loud?
You did, Rachel. You did.
They retire. Some of them die. But, you know, like, some people move on, right?
Yes.
Or actually, they dump
move
us for
on.
They move on in one way or another. So then you have this change, right, in demographics, and then of course with pay. For example, just before the pandemic, the governor of Jersey or somebody running the show there started saying, like, please, we need COBOL programmers, please, somebody, like, because we want to be able to do, you know, payroll for people or whatever, and it's kind of important. And, you know, we'll pay you whatever, you know, basically you could hold this ransom.
Yeah.
But by the same token, actually, because I did do some mainframe work at year 2000, I had people almost stalking me to come in and change dates. And, you know, I took some of the work because the amount of money that they paid for you to do this stuff was so ridiculous. I was like, there's no way. I don't care what it is. Like, just changing dates, I am not going to snub my nose at that for the kind of money. You know, this is like salaries that hedge fund managers make. I'm taking some of this. So
well, why not?
So I've been, and then I went to Microsoft. So I have been known to just sell right the hell out. Yeah. In case anybody's wondering, I did COBOL, went to Microsoft, so there we go.
Where did you go in between your two Microsoft trips then?
Mostly it was just consulting for myself before,
okay.
and in between them, and then after I came here.
I remember, I think when you left Microsoft the last time, were you in New York then?
No, that was the first time.
Was it? Because I remember seeing on Twitter or something, or someone telling me that this awesome person called Rachel Appel was leaving Microsoft and in their office in New York and was giving away copious amounts of swag.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wow, I hope one day that I might get to meet this wondrous Rachel who works at Microsoft. And it was so wowy to me. And here we are, like.
And I still give away copious amounts of swag whenever I can.
Yes. Yeah. I've had some nice swag from JetBrains. I've got nice pins.
Didn't we send you like a cool little pack recently?
It's not arrived yet, so I don't know if it's cool or not. You told me you'd sent it.
I mean, not me personally. We have a team that does that.
I'm assuming it may arrive one day. So the thing is, I
no.
I
the
get
UK,
stuff.
Though. because it's hard to get stuff in and out of the UK. It kind of actually is.
It is now with like, well, you have to pay import duties on it and all this sort of stuff. I do get lots of stuff. So I've like had the doorbell ring and there's this box and I'm like, okay, but it's usually from GitHub. GitHub seemed to send me box after box after box. And I mean, like, some of the stuff is like, I had like a whole stream kit through last time. Ooh. They sent me lights, headsets, a stream deck. So now I've got extra ones, and I should raffle those off. And then like an Ember mug, you know those mugs that keep warm? I haven't tested it out yet. You know, like these app-controlled mugs.
An IoT mug.
Yes. Oh,
awesome.
And I also,
actually, there has to be a solution to being able to keep your coffee warm for people like me who do not drink it fast enough, and you end up with iced coffee at some point, no matter what.
Well, this is it. I can drink cold coffee. Okay, that's the thing. It's the tea. Tea.
Yeah, well, I'm not microwaving that. Yes, we know.
Yes.
We spend down this rant about the tea. No microwaving tea.
Yes. Rachel and I, for those of you who don't know, are tea queens. We have offered to give lightning talks on proper tea brewing, haven't we? Because, like, so many people do it wrong.
People are barbarians. Microwave tea, don't ever do that. It's terrible.
Yeah. They, I take a travel kettle with me when I travel to the US. Do you know that? Did I tell you that?
You know, I mentioned this to Dennis.
Yeah.
And I was like, we don't need it for the Europe, but the US.
Yes, and it takes so long to boil. You're thinking of, when you go back to the US, are you like sat there for like 20 minutes waiting for this kettle to boil? Yeah, because of your half strength electricity, which I heard that you actually have the same strength electricity as we have in Europe in the US. I don't know why I'm saying you're not there. Those Americans over there, you have the same strength electricity. They just slice it in half. You get half of it.
I guess, yeah.
So,
I don't know. I don't make the decisions around there.
What, you mean you don't make the decisions about how to make tea and that they should give you more power to your kettle?
They should give more power to the kettle.
I see. Code with Sean says, I just now learned to extend my pinky when drinking tea for balance. Okay, so it's quite embarrassing. I have always extended my pinky when...
Well, you're British. It's
I
the
know.
law.
And it just doesn't work. Oh, I like this. Whitney says, you kept falling over before whilst drinking tea. I'm loving how just a pinky can make you stand up.
So they like to put things in tea here in Germany.
Like what?
Like alcohol.
Oh. Really?
Which is, I'm like, oh.
Is it nice? I guess Long Island iced tea is tea and alcohol.
There's no tea in it. That's just a whole bunch of liquors that taste like tea. It's sweet. It's fucking genius.
I didn't know that.
Oh, you know what else I'm having with some friends next week?
Glühwein? Wine?
Well, yeah, we're having the Glühwein. Yes, we do that. But there's this other thing called a Feuerzangenbowle. And it's basically fire punch. So,
I mean, it sounds more dramatic when you say it in English.
Also, well, if I say it like with a very German intonation, then it is very scary. But yeah, I have to think about the pronunciation sometimes. So,
and what's in that?
So basically, you take like a punch bowl,
right?
And you put a specific type of like wine in it, and then you have like a little thing that sits on top, and you put a sugar cone. Like there's these solid sugar cones, and you put the cone over it, you light it on fire. The sugar caramelizes and drips into the liquor, and it makes the liquor stronger and also tastier or whatever, and good times and fire and alcohol.
And bad day the next day.
It's totally the shit I should not be allowed to have under any circumstances. So I'm getting one. I'm bringing it to the US when I come next time.
Okay. All right. Well, I've had absinthe that's kind of done like that, where
Yeah, it's
you
similar
put the
in
teaspoon over the top. Yeah.
yeah.
I actually had one of those teaspoons. I got an absinthe set, and I had a glass and a special teaspoon that you could melt the sugar in over it. It was quite nice, but yeah, absinthe. Napalm says absinthe tastes like black licorice. No, absinthe tastes better.
Yeah. Black licorice is horrible. Absinthe
Yeah.
is better. Like most of the licorice flavored liquors are better.
Like
unless it's actual licorice.
Iraq. Is it Iraq? It's like a Lebanese liqueur, and it's like when you add it to water, and it turns the water white. It's really weird. My dad used to drink that, and it's like aniseed liqueur. It's very nice. But I once smuggled black absinthe back from Greece. Well, I probably will get done for that now, because it wasn't legal here, because it was 160 proof, so 80% alcohol. It was lethal.
That's like moonshine.
Yeah. Do you remember last year there was, everyone was doing videos of them doing fit things at the beginning of lockdown. And then there was a thing about taking a shot and doing chocolate.
Did that with absinthe.
That was the black absinthe. I did that with it, and it nearly killed me.
Yes. So Dennis saw that, and he was like, "Why does she not know how to drink absinthe?" And I'm like, "She does. That wasn't the point, right?" But being German, he's gonna go all German about it. So.
Oh dear. Napalm says, "Give me rum. I'm a pirate at heart."
I like rum.
Yeah.
There's that Kraken black rum from Seattle. That is very good.
I'd like to try that.
Very delicious.
Is it? The last rum I had was Mount Gay from Barbados that I brought back. And it was very good. I've not had Kraken. I've not had Captain Morgan. 80% cooking rum. You had that. So Jim went to school or college with Leon, his friend. He was from the Caribbean, or like his parents were from the Caribbean, and I think that Silicon Orchid was tricked into having this 80% like 160 proof cooking rum. I think that's the story. So I mean, look, I knew we were going to chat about all sorts of crazy stuff, Rachel, that we'd go off onto this is what happened last time we streamed. We went off on tangents, but I think this has been very enjoyable, learning all the different things about that. I guess we can touch on things that also make me drink alcohol, which is all the new stuff coming out at the moment.
Right. Well, if you think about it, we're sitting here talking about history, and there's a good deal of people who weren't around for the whole history of .NET like I have been. And so if you aren't aware of it, like certain things you might see and you'll look at it and go, I wouldn't do it this way. Why? Why is it done this way? And then you might go, well, I don't understand it, but I know how to use it, so I'm just going to do it this way, but it's a little weird and whatever. And you just, you need to get stuff done, so you go on your way. But this is why, like, you uncover these whys, right? When you know that history and you get to hear about it. So yeah, all of that, like MVC, for example, would be something a lot of classic ASP developers would kind of create something on their own to make a nice little pattern to be able to, render stuff and, keep bits of code away from other bits of code to try to segment it off into layers and things. So it might not be the full entire framework, but you can still, as it is for Microsoft, but you still get something that you can work with, which is, so when you see other people doing it and you've worked with those and then you work with Microsoft and their influence from other communities as well, then you kind of get that idea of where things come from and why they are the way they are.
And this is it. And I think it kind of goes around in circles, because lots of people say like Blazor is like Silverlight or web forms, and that's come around. And then looking at minimal APIs where everything has been ripped out of a pattern and everything is now dumped back into a single file. And I found myself putting patterns back in to try and maintain it. And working out, well, I don't want all my code in just one like 800 line file, thank you. So now I'm having to put stuff back in and redesign stuff. And I feel like we've just gone like...
Yeah, I've said this several times. Technology just keeps coming around and around and around. Like I remember when it was client server, from monolith to client server was a big deal. And then we're like, oh, not just that, there's another tier coming down. Then you had 3-tier and N-tier. And this was like, we thought this was it.
Yeah.
We're done here. This is how we compute forever. Wow, what the hell? Microservices and, cloud architectures and stuff. Then that kind of came up. And so you have all these different interesting little things going on, architectural tidbits. But yeah, it comes around in the same circle. I know people say Blazor is like Silverlight, but the key difference here is like all they're thinking is a thing in the browser, and they're specifically thinking WebAssembly. But outside of the fact that it is something that runs in a browser, there's literally no similarity.
No.
Right? Because Silverlight was actually writing your XAML and stuff like that. It was a plugin, right? It was a browser extension.
Like Flash.
Right? Like Flash.
Yeah.
And it was Flash that killed it, right?
Yes.
Not Microsoft.
It's Flash and Apple and Safari not supporting.
And it was just the industry turn with Apple's lead. And I'm perfectly fine with this because this was cumbersome, like if we were going to move forward with that model. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to draw that line and move forward, and it's going to leave some people very unhappy. And the Silverlight devs were unhappy about that, understandably. Right? But sometimes you have to do that, and they did. So this is not the same. It is .NET. So presumably, if you could do Blazor WebAssembly. But if all of a sudden one day there was no more of that downloading to the client, it would just turn into Blazor server.
Yeah. And you'd reuse all of the stuff you did, all of the components.
Right, could never do that. But you can convert a WebAssembly to server, and then it just doesn't get downloaded. And then it just uses SignalR, as the primary transport. Oh, I do too. It's great.
It's one of my favorite things to play with. If I'd wired in the bot properly, we would have had SignalR things falling from the sky. We could have been doing that. I mean, we've got like 12 minutes. I can put a scene in to have it if you want and show you my falling down stuff that I have. I was quite pleased with it. I whipped it up yesterday. It was only like a little bot. I love playing with SignalR.
It's just fun. Yeah.
It's just fun. Come on, I'm going to pop it on this screen. Come on, I'll do it. And then we can have some fun and you can see the silly things I've built with SignalR. But there we go, because I could just add it in here. Dun, 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 dun. Okay.
I had no idea you could just run code in a streaming service like this.
Oh, so it's not quite code in it. So what it is once I get it in, I import a browser feed. So now it should be running. It should have said hello in the chat. If I can find where chat's gone. I've lost chat, everybody. Where's chat? Oh, there it is. Okay. So you can see that the bot has now said hello in the chat. So I'm going to see if we can do it. I think the command is rain. Yay! There we go. So that's all done with SignalR. So we've got our unnamed crane.
Crane rain.
Crane rain. That's what it is. It's crane rain.
Rain.
And little ferns that now that they've fallen down from the sky, they actually look like some kind of alien sea monster thing.
Down with that.
Yeah, that's it. So we'll have another go. Let's go. And we could hide behind this, Rachel.
I released the Kraken.
Yes, that's what it looks like, a Kraken. There you go. We can hide behind all our little bits and bobs there lurking around. So I whipped that up yesterday because it's just so fun to do stuff with SignalR. So Code with Sean says OBS runs Lua though. So what I do is no code at all. It's literally a browser feed. So you can bring any browser link and it will render. That's how you're here, Rachel. You're in a browser, and I just happen to bring your browser feed in.
Oh, it's like being in the Matrix.
Yes, you're stuck in a browser, and only I can release you. So yes, there we go. I've got the bot in now, so that's a bit of fun. Anyone can do the rain, and I have the severed puppy heads on my stream, and I have literally severed puppy heads. Doesn't everybody? I have a severed crane head on here. Severed animal heads is the way forward for bots.
You put it that way.
But they've hidden me completely behind these things. So Code with Sean says, I stream when I can too. I use a plugin that is written in Lua for a countdown timer. I did my countdown timer from Stream Elements because I'm not clever like that to do code in it. But the virtual room hooks into the WebSockets on here. So OBS is quite an interesting tool. It allows you to build up fun stuff. Are you saying I can make it rain too? Yes! Whitney, you can type exclamation rain. Any of you can type exclamation rain. Yeah, see? There you go, Whitney. So everyone can make it rain.
Bouncy rain.
I know. And I do have other code that will make things zoom around. And I think what we also have is if I do this, if we do drop, I think you could try that. Is that one working? It might not. Drop. Let me see if I can drop an emote. I thought I tested that one. No, that one's not working. That might be on a different browser. But yeah, there you go. Hang on. There you go. So there you go. That's kind of fun with SignalR. What's your favourite thing to play with at the moment then? Is there any, before we wrap up, what's your favourite thing to do at the moment? Is it even .NET? Are you messing around with other stuff?
No, mostly other stuff. I mean, in the land of computing, probably like Blazor and .NET, but just the regular new stuff. I do like playing with that. I don't know. Pandemic makes it hard to do things, but being that I have a stronger need now to speak better German, between living here and, relatives here and stuff. So there's that. So I've been doing, a lot of language training and stuff.
So I should say, when we say goodbye today, I should say tschüss.
Tschüss.
Tschüss. So whenever I speak to my German friends, I always go tschüss. Oh, we've got Clarkio here. Hello, Clarkio. Lovely to see you. And let me give you a shout out. I got the shout out in, folks. I should give Code with Sean at one as well. But you just got your master's this year, so that's kind of a big thing to have done over the pandemic.
A bit of time for other things, then you can't get to other things.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, master's degree. There's that.
Yes. So I have to learn PHP for mine. So that's what I'm going to be doing over Christmas.
I lucked out. They were already using Java, and they just assumed that everybody already knew Java. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. That's not a problem for me. So yeah. I just did the stuff in Java. The only thing I didn't care for was, and it's not because I work at JetBrains, but we had to use the Eclipse modeling framework for a particular modeling project. And there is no equivalent in our tools. There's not even, well, obviously it's Java, so there's nothing over in, with Microsoft's tools either or anything. And the only thing is Eclipse, and it is their framework, right? So there is nothing else. And so then I was like, oh gosh, the UI is horrible, and I don't like the experience of Eclipse. No. I'm pretty sure anybody, I don't think .NET people at all, if they were going to Java, would like that. But I think it's actually objectively worse than ours. Our tools are good, and it was very difficult to do things in Eclipse, so it's kind of annoying.
I've never done any Java, but my teammate Josh Long is like,
Oh yeah, he's a Java guy.
he's the Java guy. He has kept threatening. 1 second. I'll just die. He keeps threatening to teach me some Java and Spring. So we're trying to work that out. He's a fantastic teacher, so I think it'd be really good fun to learn with him.
I think you'll be fine because C# in many ways is Microsoft Java. At least you go back in the beginnings, there was a lot of influence from Java. I mean, the whole fact of having our base classes, like Java base class library and garbage collection and this type of general purpose object oriented language and all of that. So there's quite a bit of it. Similar stuff, right? And then you have the tools are a little different because you go with like Gradle and things like that, which actually helps quite a bit if you go with Gradle for automating things.
Yeah.
Where different stuff over in .NET, but at least conceptually, a lot of it's the same. Different namespaces, obviously, and then it's just finding objects and stuff like that, and knowing what they actually have that you can use versus what's in .NET is also part of that. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I did a presentation with Josh at Spring Live in September, where we basically both coded the same thing in our respective languages, and I could see so many similarities, and I think it wouldn't be that difficult, and I am looking forward to learning it with him. He's just super busy, and he is on the other side of the planet, so it's really hard to coordinate, but we're working on it, so that should be quite fun. So I think we're at the end of our show. That's flown by. That has been so much fun.
Yeah.
I'm heading over to Code It Live now. I think we're doing a breakdown of stuff that happened at .NetConf. Do you know .NetConf was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, Rachel? I can't remember anything that happened at it. Can you?
.NET stuff?
Yeah. That's a good line. I'm going to steal that. Can I just go and say .NET stuff happened?
Yeah, I remember it happened, and yeah, it's the same kind of thing. I didn't actually get to watch a whole lot of it yet, so.
No. I watched like some bits on day 1, and then day 2, which was the Wednesday, I was prepping for a talk at DevRelCon, so I didn't really get to see anything then. And then I had to do some prep for my session at .NetConf. So I'm waiting just to have some spare time where I can sit down and watch some of the stuff.
Watch the videos.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a little bit on Blazor, and I wanted to see minimal APIs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I suspect the parts that I did watch, I already saw most of this, and I was like, okay, so I don't think they've gotten too far ahead yet.
No.
So, I never know. You might miss something.
Well, this is it. There were some things that I was like, oh, I don't know what that is. Oh, that's cool, but it's only because people have plucked it out of, some new cool features with Blazor. I was talking about that before this show. I just find it so hard to actually get in and find stuff to go and do, to find out the pertinent stuff to me. There's some things that aren't going to be things that I want to know about or need to know about, I guess, because they're not all the stuff with .NET MAUI. I want to do it, but it's not. I do web, so going and learning those sorts of things, it's a big tangent for me because I don't have any prior knowledge of doing it. But yeah, I think I'll go make some shit up over on the Code It Live channel. They'll love me. It's fine. So anything that you want to share or talk about, Rachel? What's happening with JetBrains Rider? Any new updates?
Like 1 minute. Well, we're working on the last little bits of our final release of the year for 2021 product. So there's that. We're in the early access preview.
Yep.
So our EAP cycle, and we go through any number of these. So I think we're up to like 8 today, 8 or 9, somewhere around there. And so then we just keep putting them out. 9, and almost, like every couple days or, for a while, and then we released the product. So 2021.3, which will be our
final one.
Yeah. So we're working on getting that out the door. So all kind of, new stuff. Basically, a lot is because it's a .NET product, trying to keep up with a lot of the new stuff in .NET, .NET 6, that sort of thing. Maui is a big deal. And with some of those recent changes, makes it a fun challenge,
Yeah. Well, I've just been updating all of my rider today because there's lots of stuff. There's lots of great features in it that I enjoy. I flip-flop between the two, and I'm flopping back over to rider at the moment. So I do love so many of the features on it. And well, I want to say a huge thank you, Rachel, just in case anybody missed who this awesome lady is. There you go, Rachel. Popped it in there. I guess we can let you go and have your evening, have some dinner, have a nice glass of pirate juice.
Yes.
And a huge thank you for joining me. We're going to head on over to the Code Live channel, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, just before we go, Rachel, I don't have a guest for next week. I'm working on it because I was supposed to be going to Oslo, and I'm not going to Oslo now. We can have a show next week, so
okay. I could come back.
Well, we might see that. We'll see. I have spoken to a few people. They haven't responded. How dare they? But we do have some awesome guests left for the week. I'm going to attempt to switch over to this view. 1 second. Dual desktop. So this is you, Rachel, live today. And then we've got, in 2 weeks' time, Matty Stratton from Pulumi. He's going to try and teach me DevOps. That's going to be a frustrating experience for him, but he's brave. And then we got Luce Carter, a fellow MVP, and she's going to be talking MongoDB and imposter syndrome. So some great speakers left this year. With that, I have to go back over here because nothing is working because, I tried to be too clever with all my multi-streaming. And with that, a big thank you to Rachel. Everyone has said thank you to you in there.
Thanks for having me.
And Rachel, what are we going to say? Tschüss.
Tschüss.